And he goes and he's going to do a special knock at the door when he comes back, and he comes up and he's got bags full of money to give us for our, hundreds of dollars. And then he goes, we're totally paranoid that he's going to bust us. And they're going to come and take all our money, and they're going to...
Right. He just sets you up.
Yeah.
Gets his money back and gets the next guy.
Because you have no trust.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's just this...
I spent a lot of time in South America. I've been there, done that. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we're sitting in a bed like a couple of teenage fools throwing money like this and having a great time with the idea. However, I came back from that safari with a brand new Murum pipe for my friend Gardner McKay, a leather tool bag that was, for me. I had sculptures and things. It was, for the next Christmas or something. We just made out like a bandit, And we actually went to this place. They recommended to go to this place for these small ebony sculptures. And, we were supposed to bring back some for somebody else or whatever. And when we got into now this is back in '85, the trust of this shopkeeper, he said, because you couldn't get money out of the country.
Right.
There's like all these different problems they had back in those days. We picked about 10 sculptures in our bags, and went to pay him, and he said, no. He says, when you get back to the States, send the money to my son at Brown University in Rhode Island.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
What the trust? You're right.
Well,
No kidding.
Well, and it's the only way they could get the money out of the country.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It was a real experience, and
it would have cost him so much to get it out there. It would have been worth it.
He wouldn't even, but he couldn't.
He couldn't even get it out.
He couldn't. So all the shopkeepers had ways of doing it. Will you mail this card to my wife, or whatever. It had hundreds of dollars in it or something.
Okay, so we have like. It becomes a super adventure. It almost sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
Going around and paying people off to get your visas, to get to this place, to play with this money and do all that stuff. And I know you for whatever reason, not into the beauty, all the intrigue or everything, it just caught you.
Yeah. By the throat.
I don't want to stop you from maybe finishing that story yet, if you had more, but I want to get into. Okay, now you're doing safaris.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, what happened was I went back we finally got to the crater. I don't know what the crater is. Okay, it's the worst road you've ever been on in your life for like 11 hours, and it's dusty, and I'm jet lagged.
A kidney bumper shaker.
I feel like crap. I'm thinking, why did I do this? But then we started going up into the highlands, and when we got to to Lake Minyara, we went 1,500 feet up to the escarpment, and then on top of the escarpment, you got this rich red Murum earth that smells beautiful, and the people are all dressed in colors, and they're walking with pots on their heads without their hands. The greenery everywhere is just spectacular in the farmland, and then we finally get up to where the crater is, and it's a large. At the time, I didn't know if the crater was as big as this room. Okay, I didn't know what it was. So we get to the rim, and you're supposed to be able to look in from this looking point, but the fog or the cloud, I'm not sure what it was, had rolled over the edge, so you couldn't see anything.
Right.
So we start around the rim to get to the lodge. We drive down into the lodge, and we get out of the vehicles. I walk past the reception because I see these giant 17-foot windows with a big balcony. And I walk out on the balcony, and I'm looking at one of God's treasures.
It's right at the crater, right?
The crater.
Oh, yeah.
It's 2,500 feet above. We're looking straight down 2,500 feet.
Wow.
It is permanent home to 30,000 animals.
So this is big. We're talking big.
We're talking 10 miles across, 2,500 feet deep. It's 100 square miles.
Wow.
And it's the largest intact caldera on the planet. It's where I worship.
Okay.
And what happened is, we go to the room,
right.
and it's the same pedestrian. It's like going to one of those old Motel 6s where there's a bed and there's a stand and that's it. And, you're lucky if you have toilet paper kind of thing, and a half a bar of Lux soap, and the big picture window where you're all looking into the crater from your room, and it's just amazing. We watched a rain storm come across the crater, only almost as wide as our room, and it ended up going right over us. And probably 30, 40 feet on either side didn't have it. I mean, I couldn't believe it. My eyes.
Where you're actually watching the whole rainstorm move like a
just
beam.
like a beam. That's what it was like. Then, you go to dinner and you try to eat, and the food it's as bland as you've ever tasted food. They have, they have vegetables. They have, usually chicken or something along those lines. But in those days, they just didn't have flavor, no salt or anything.
Right.
The soups were universally good, and the rolls were really good, so everybody was happy. I ended up being famous for my safaris by bringing a bottle of Spike, that herbal, it's like salt, sea salt, and various herbs.
Right.
So I pass it around the table. and of course, every single year, Tanzania got better. Every single year, and especially when they went to a market economy and they, started having investments come in and everything. But in those early days, it was just amazing. And I'm at the crater thinking, does anybody know about this? Of course, people have known about it for 100 years, but I'm thinking that nobody knows about it. But we went back to Nairobi. We had a whole trip throughout Kenya. Masai Mara, the greatest game park of all. We went to the Serengeti. We did everything.
Right.
Went to the coast, to the Mombasa, and that's where I had a really major thing happen. We're out in the bush for like 3 weeks now, and I come into the lobby of this hotel on the sand. White Sands is the name of the hotel, and I see the local, Nation, which is the Kenya newspaper, and it's got a photo of the Challenger going up, and I think, oh right, Dennis, that's the one with the school teacher. And I picked it up, and I opened it up, and I opened it up to a 2-page spread of it exploding.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you saw this American sitting in the lobby of that hotel, weeping uncontrollably. It was amazing. I'll never forget the moment. So finally we get back to Nairobi, and I arrange a one-man show for him at the Intercontinental, and invite Leakey and all the famous people and ministers and so forth. And one guy came from it was an art gallery, but I can't remember the name of it, and he bought everything. A couple of people bought something before he did, but everything that was left he bought. And then the next year, I brought a whole group of people, about 18 people, with Dennis on safari, my first real safari, and we filmed it for television, local Kenya television, and had all the celebrities there and so forth from the local area, and that was a huge success. So that's how it started. We just kept going. Dennis ended up having a kid, and he didn't end up going as much anymore, and so I just took over, and it became my program.
Okay.
And I custom designed the safaris so that people would have an ebb and a flow, and a big punch at the end. So they would go home with a taste in their mouth like, wow, that's the greatest thing I've ever done.
Right. Well, you did safaris. You did some coordination for Humanity Unites Brilliance.
Yes.
And where they were going and they were helping build schools and give water.
Yeah, I've done 2 of those actually. The first one was just to get everybody over there for the hub program.
Right.
And I wasn't. We didn't really actually do a safari on that. We just got them there so they could do the humanitarian work.
Right.
And then the next year, I brought several members in, and we did work in the school, and, in the abandoned baby center and so forth.
Right. I saw the films.
Yeah,
there.
and that gets you. I'll tell you.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't too long after that
They did great work.
my wife Tony and Tana, my daughter who lives in Kenya, we had the drought. It was so bad that when we got to Samburu region in northern Kenya, the Wasonero River, which is the lifeblood of that whole region, I've never seen it in 20 years be absolutely dry. The river's not there.
Wow.
And that drought, we actually watched animals die. And, a hippo couldn't make it, to wherever there was water. Then the girls all sat in the living room where Tana lives there and came up with Kenya Water Wells Trust.
That's right, the Kenya Water Wells
And
Trust.
so what happened was...
Because Hub used to work with that and the Rainmaker.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember now.
And so Kenya Water Wells Trust began to drill wells, for indigenous people in remote areas. So that's the family trust It's the nonprofit side, and then we do the the
And so
safari
you're still
side.
doing that?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Although
and you take donations for that, or?
we certainly do.
Oh, then what's
It's
the
harder and harder.
I know. What's
Yeah.
the .com for that? It's getting
.org. Yeah.
.org.
Kenya Water Wells Trust. .org.
Okay,
Yeah.
remember that. It's a really.
And-
Yeah,
and
we've
at
seen the
the
work
end-
you can do.
And at
It's
the end
incredible.
of the day, that's a reward that you can't explain to people. You just, when you see people, when we watch that first well, we have a video on the site.
Right.
Actually, Gene put it on his site, and the water comes out of the ground like an oil gusher, and the people are afraid. Number one, they don't believe the water comes from the ground.
Right.
All
We
they
see
know
it
is
come from the
rain
land.
and river,
Right.
right? So you drill down, the water is cold and pure. And some of the elders, they don't want you to touch it. They think it's juju,
Right.
So you have to convince people that it's okay. And of course, water is the source of life. So they get
Well, more than the
convinced.
source of life out there, and I understand that water issues are the biggest issue,
Yeah, it is.
above malaria and everything else.
Most young girls, 12ish range, will hike 6-7 kilometers every day for water, and a hand dug well, and that hand dug well will get deep enough so that one girl is going to get buried when it collapses, and the water is awful, and it's full of parasites, and the donkeys and the other livestock that are around, because the donkeys carry the water, will defecate and urinate and
Right.
gets into it's a mess. So that when you are able to drill a well, the first place we drilled was the driest place on earth, as far as I'm concerned. It was like talcum powder dust,
Right.
and those people, after a year or two, actually had watered everything and grew enough vegetables to where they had excess to sell. So the outreach was like 60,000 people plus.
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean that you put that together, because that's huge. That's huge. But I know we don't have much time here, so I do want to get into the programs that you have, because you have some incredible programs now that you're
Yeah,
doing.
for several years I've had a favorite, which is called the Crown of East Africa, and that's basically Kenya, Tanzania.